Discover the incredible moment when a woman's kiss transformed a billionaire's life forever. Hope Miller stood in the dimly lit break room of Millville Medical Center, the warming glow of a microwave and a half-eaten granola bar for company. Her mind raced through the shift ahead, calculating the hours she'd juggle with her mother's nightly care. Exhaustion clung to her like a heavy coat. Glancing at the flicker of a family photo on her phone, she felt a painful twinge. The smiles froze in time, reminding her of sacrifices, dreams pushed aside, and a yearning for a life unburdened by responsibilities. Would her family be proud, or was she simply failing them? Rushing to her station, she shivered at the thought of seeing the new patient crammed in the emergency unit. She'd heard whispers of a high-profile accident, the elusive billionaire, James Hawthorne. She felt an odd anticipation as her colleague briefed her on the man whose wealth had only ever been a shadow crossing her humble life. Underneath her determination to give him impeccable care, a flip of envy twisted in her stomach. Here was a man who had everything but had ended up here, in this unremarkable hospital bed, vulnerable. She barely knew him, yet his presence stirred something in her she couldn't name. "Hope, you're up!" The call snapped her back to reality. She suppressed the tremor in her hands, aware that tending to such a status-filled individual was a facet of care she'd never experienced. Pulling the curtain aside, her heart raced, but when she saw him, battered and bruised, long limbs laid haphazardly on the white sheets, her breath caught. "Miss Miller," his voice rasped, a gravity that demanded attention. Their eyes locked, and in that instant, an unfamiliar vulnerability exchanged between them. As she assessed his injuries, the air thickened, suffocating her thoughts. She hesitated, feeling the weight of his world pressing down on her. She wasn't just inspecting wounds, she was confronting a kaleidoscope of emotions that coursed through her. Empathy, longing, insecurity. As she cleaned the area where the bruising met skin, she leaned closer, the shared moment breathing life into an unexpected connection. "You'll be all right," she whispered, heart thrumming with warmth. An impulse seized her, and before she could second-guess herself, she pressed her lips against his forehead, a spontaneous gesture meant to soothe his pain. The spark that ignited mirrored conflicting feelings within her. It felt right, yet wrong. What did a kiss mean? Did it transcend boundaries? The kiss reverberated through her doubt-filled mind, provoking questions about the possibility of it leading to anything more. Hope suddenly felt as if her world had shifted just slightly, like the first blush of dawn light breaking the night. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days passed, but the kiss lingered in her thoughts, stirring a longing that unnerved her. The rhythm of her responsibilities drummed louder as her mother's health faltered further, threatening to spiral her back into a shadow she fought to escape. How could she dream of transcending her life, where love seemed a fantasy, when the weight of her obligations pulled her into the depths? She felt him pulling further into her consciousness, and yet, the gulf between them widened. James's struggles with perception and privilege matched her unseen scars. A nurse and a billionaire, could it ever bridge the chasm of their realities? As she faced mounting pressures, her mother's decline, the imposition of a life she felt confined within, hope flickered like a candle against wind. As she stared into the uncertainty ahead, a desperate anguish curled in her chest. Tragedy and dreams wove a tapestry of chaos, entwining their lives, and just as it seemed the kerfuffle of their different worlds might unite, another challenge lurked in the shadows, ready to unravel everything they hadn't even begun to build. Hope sat at the edge of her bed, the weight of her responsibilities like an anchor in her soul. With a heavy heart, she watched the morning light slip through her window, illuminating the small, cluttered space that contained both her hopes and her fears. A crumpled list lay on her nightstand, filled with reminders of her mother's medications and appointments, interspersed with notes about her nursing shifts. The relentless cycle of obligation bound her, making her dreams feel like far-off stars, impossible to reach. Her phone buzzed, snapping her from her reverie. It was a text from her colleague at the medical center, checking in on her after the incident with James. The words felt hollow, each letter prickling at an invisible bruise on her heart. She had tended to countless patients, but few left such an impact, not just on her psyche, but on the way she viewed the world. Each day she felt James's presence echoing in her thoughts, his vulnerability intertwined with her own resentments. Hope had awakened that day with fresh determination, a desire to reclaim her agency. The shadows of doubt had clouded her vision for too long. Rather than surrender to despair, she needed to confront her reality with intention. Suddenly, the notion of becoming more than just a caretaker felt possible, but only if she could stir the inertia of her life. As she donned her scrubs, the fabric felt tighter against her spirit. She wrestled with the temptation to retreat into familiar routines. But today, she wasn't just a nurse. She intended to shift her perspective. Each movement should overflow with purpose. Perhaps confronting James again could kindle the spark that had ignited during their last encounter. Arriving at the hospital, the sterile scent of antiseptics assaulted her senses. The unyielding fluorescent lights above felt relentless, but it was here that she could channel her emotions into her work. She navigated through the bustling corridors, her heart urging her to approach James's room. When she entered, he lay there, still bruised but with a glimmer of resolve that flickered in his eyes. Those once passive pools had evolved, reflecting strength. Hope felt a surge of energy course through her. In this moment, they were two souls marred by circumstance, yet capable of addressing each other's battles. "Miss Miller," James acknowledged, a fraction softer than their last encounter. James. The familiarity of saying his name ignited a warmth within her. After dwelling in caution, she took a step closer, realizing that healing could be a shared journey. "You don't have to call me Miss Miller. Hope works just fine," she replied, her heart racing as she let down the walls she had built around herself. For a fleeting moment, the world outside them faded. Vulnerability dared to bloom between them, a hesitance laced with courage. They both craved solace, both clinging to the threads of connection woven through unspoken understanding. "Hope," he repeated, as if tasting the word, allowing its sweetness to linger. "I feel like I've faced my own limitations here while being stuck in this state. But there's something about you that feels different." His words awakened something within her, igniting an urge to explore the unknown paths of her own desires. They shared a breath, a rhythm, a recognition of strength in mutual fragility. Yet, just as the tide seemed to turn, the sharp ring of the intercom fractured their moment. A nurse's voice crackled through the speakers, announcing a new crisis in the emergency unit. Hope's pulse quickened, the call of duty pulling her back to reality. She hated the thought of leaving James, but the undeniable truth of her vocation tore her from him. "I have to go," she said, reluctant to break their connection, yet aware of the world demanding her attention. "Hope," he murmured, the weight of his gaze pressing against her. "Don't forget about us." They exchanged glances tinged with unspoken possibilities, and as she left his room, a flicker of determination ignited. A new challenge awaited her, but the journey intertwined with James's wasn't over yet. It was only just beginning. In rushing back to the emergency unit, she resolved to harness the intensity of their connection to fuel her ambitions. She would dare to pursue growth, not just in her profession, but in her heart. Perhaps dreams weren't meant to wither under obligation, but to thrive against adversity. As she reached the chaotic emergency room, a new wave of patients flooded in, symbolizing countless trials ahead. Yet she thrust herself forward into this new chapter with tenacity, each moment a test of her evolving spirit. Facing the unknown, Hope whispered to herself, "Now it's time to rise." Hope stepped into the torrent of activity in the emergency room, her senses gradually sharpening as she surveyed the chaos. A multicolored cacophony of scrubs moved about her, nurses shouting orders, doctors consulting logs, each person a piece of the intricate puzzle that formed the hospital's heartbeat. She felt a whirl of anxiety wrap around her, but she quickly pushed it aside, channeling the adrenaline coursing through her veins into a singular focus on her patients. As she intercepted a gurney rushing past, she recognized the young girl lying on it. Emily, one of the frequent flyers in the ED, an 8-year-old with a mischievous smile that always seemed to defy her condition. Anxiety blanketed her own desire to connect with the child, but as Emily's frightened eyes met hers, Hope realized that her healing extended beyond the physical. It reached into the emotional. "Hey, kiddo," Hope said, crouching next to the gurney. "What's going on today?" "My tummy hurts," Emily whimpered, her voice small against the buzzing activity of the room. Hope felt the knot tightening in her chest and knew that while the medical procedures meant a lot, they needed something more. "Let's make this quick, okay?" She winked, struggling to draw out a smile from the girl. just as she had seen James's semblance of resolve shimmer in the shadows. "We're gonna get you all fixed up, and then you can tell me all about the new book you're reading. Deal?" A flicker of hope sparked in Emily's eyes as she nodded vigorously. This moment amplified something deep within Hope. She had the power not just to tend to wounds, but to touch lives on emotional levels. In this intricate dance of healing, she realized the depth of her impact was multifaceted, and resolving to embrace that fullness felt simultaneously exhilarating and terrifying. The clang of metal and urgency clicked together in her veins as she moved through the busy ward. But as the hours passed, she was confronted with a painful truth. The emotional weight of her experiences started compounding. Each patient she treated echoed a reflection of her own struggles. Each family brought questions that hung heavy. What did it mean to truly care for others when your own heart was still uncharted? As her shift continued, a private moment at the nurse's station opened a window for introspection. She found her colleague, Clara, hunched over a chart, the strain of the day visible in her creased brow. On a whim, Hope approached her. "Clara, I've been thinking." Hope's voice hesitated, revealing a conflict she had not fully acknowledged until now. "What do you think about the idea of going beyond just being the ones who mend wounds? I mean, going deeper, into why we're here?" Clara looked up, surprise dancing across her features. "You're asking if we can engage more emotionally with our patients?" "To be honest, yes. I feel like I've stumbled upon something today, a realization of interconnected growth, but it feels daunting. What if I misstep?" "That's the risk we take," Clara said slowly. "But it's the heart of our profession. We can't just patch physical wounds, we must forge connections. Emotions are messy, but they're a part of healing. Lean into that." The affirmation resonated with her. Instead of running from vulnerability, what if she embraced it? For far too long she had allowed the burden of responsibility to block her path, but now she could see the glimmers of light in the complexity of emotion. As her shift wound down and she prepared to go home, Hope couldn't shake the feeling that there was more she needed to uncover, both about herself and the depths of connection she longed for. A plan began to form in her mind. How could she intentionally cultivate relationships with her patients like she had with James? The triangle of hope, fear, and courage distinctively aligned within her. When she finally returned home, she threw herself into the notes she'd made about her aspirations. The path to integrate her newfound insights into her daily practice ignited a fire in her that she hadn't felt before. She would reach out to James again, not just as part of her role, but as part of her journey, to uncover those hidden aspects of herself. "Who knows what I might discover," she mused, the promise of change rippling through her thoughts. As she settled into bed, tired yet invigorated, the doorbell rang softly in the stillness of the evening. With her heart racing, she moved toward the door, uncertain yet filled with a sense of impending revelation awaiting her beyond the threshold. Hope opened the door cautiously, her heart pounding from both fatigue and anticipation. Standing on her doorstep was James, his presence strikingly familiar, yet shrouded in the mystery of her newfound aspirations. His smile was warm but uncertain, hinting at the myriad of thoughts swirling in his mind. She gestured for him to enter, recognizing that this encounter held the potential to reshape both of their paths. "James, hey, I didn't expect to see you," she said, her voice blending surprise and eagerness. "I know it's late," he replied, glancing around her modest living space. "But I felt I needed to come. More accurately, I wanted to come. After our last talk, something changed for me." Her pulse quickened. It was the moment she had been deliberating since their last encounter, a chance to delve deeper, to confront emotions she had stowed away for too long. Hope ushered him to the cozy living room, the modest lamp casting soft shadows that felt conducive to intimate conversation. "Can I get you something to drink?" she offered, aware of the nervous tightness in her own throat. "No, I'm good," he said, his focus unwavering. "I think I just need to talk." As they sat across from each other on the well-used sofa, the air thickened with unspoken words. Hope wrestled with her instincts, her desire to guide the conversation toward healing and connection. Slowly, she leaned in. "I've been reflecting on our conversation about vulnerability," she began, feeling a surge of courage. His eyes locked onto hers, his expression a mix of intrigue and apprehension. "That conversation opened a floodgate for me. I realized that I've shielded myself for so long under layers of professional success and financial stability. But at what cost? I don't even truly know myself anymore." Her heart ached as she heard the vulnerability in his confession. It's about that balance, isn't it? We can achieve so much and still miss the emotional connection that brings real fulfillment. I've started to realize that in the ER, it's not just about treating symptoms. It's about understanding the person behind the pain. I wish I had your clarity, he said. His voice lowered, and she could see the conflict simmering within him. What if exposing myself, allowing others to see my insecurities, could lead to greater pain? What if I lose everything? With her own experience looming like a specter, she turned the conversation inward. What if by embracing vulnerability, we gain an invaluable understanding of ourselves? We might discover strengths we didn't know existed. When I'm at work, it can become easy to lose sight of my own emotions while assisting your patients. But facing that fear? It could mean finding a deeper connection. James studied her intently, the silence hanging between them heavy yet transformative. What if we take that leap together? You help me navigate my emotional landscape, and I can be there for you too? The warmth of his proposal sent a ripple through her, an invitation to awaken the parts of herself tangled in doubt and hesitation. Hope felt a flutter of excitement mixed with anxiety. She had come so far, and yet the thought of intertwining her journey with James's felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, where the vast unknown awaited her. Together, she echoed, visualizing the intricate tapestry of their emotional vulnerabilities woven together. But how do we start? He asked, his brow furrowing slightly, revealing his concern. Hope took a deep breath, her resolve solidifying with each passing moment. We start by committing to honesty, our fears, our aspirations. We can establish a safe space to share without judgment. When vulnerability becomes the norm, we can push past the shields we've built. Okay, he said, a soft smile beginning to break through his uncertainty. Honesty it is. As they started to explore their individual landscapes of vulnerability and connection, a sense of urgency began to pulse in her mind. Beyond this newfound dynamic lay essential truths waiting. How would they engage with the world they had shielded themselves from? The thread of personal development and exploration was fraying dangerously at the edges. With newfound resolve, Hope dared to ponder. Was she ready to face the ghosts of her past while guiding James toward a brighter future? The question lingered heavy in the air, igniting a sense of possibility that stirred both hope and trepidation. Hope awoke the next morning, the sun creeping through the blinds and washing her room in warm hues. Last night's conversation with James lingered in her mind, a reminder of the emotional terrain they had both agreed to navigate. The thought both excited and terrified her. They were on the brink of uncovering new layers of themselves, but the fear of what lay beneath weighed heavily. In the quiet of her home, she swung her legs over the edge of the bed and took a moment to gather her thoughts. The vulnerability they'd agreed to pursue was daunting. What hidden aspects of herself were waiting to be discovered? And how might those discoveries affect her professional life? She resolved to take small steps forward, beginning with a commitment to herself. Gazing at her reflection in the mirror, she practiced an affirmation. I will embrace my vulnerabilities as strengths, not weaknesses. It felt awkward at first, but there was a flicker of truth in those words, a meaning she understood in her bones as a medical professional. Others needed to feel seen and understood. Perhaps that applied to her as well. After a quick breakfast, she decided to review her responsibilities at the ER. Patients were always at the forefront of her mind, but now she mulled over how she might share more of her own story within their paths. If she could let her guard down just a fraction, perhaps it would encourage them to do the same. Wasn't that the essence of healing? Connection? Her shift began like any other, filled with the usual chaos. As she attended to patients, she noticed her interactions evolving. Instead of adhering strictly to protocols, she sought to connect on a deeper level. A middle-aged man, clearly suffering from chronic pain, caught her attention. Instead of rushing through the examination, she took a moment to ask him about his life beyond the symptoms. He spoke about his love for gardening and how he wished he could manage his plants again. Gardening can be therapeutic, she replied, feeling a kinship growing between them. It's like nurturing a part of yourself. As she listened intently, a sense of fulfillment surged through her, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long while. Later that evening, she recapped her day with James over a video call. His eyes sparkled with interest as she described her patient interactions, the connections she had fostered. It sounds like you're already integrating what we talked about into your work, he commented, pride swelling in his voice. But there was a lingering uncertainty in her heart. Was she genuinely opening herself up, or was she simply rebranding her practicality under the guise of vulnerability? I feel like I'm still holding back, James, she confessed, a hint of frustration rising. What if I'm not capable of truly being vulnerable? Well, everything takes practice, he said gently. I think you're doing great. Just remember, vulnerability doesn't mean sharing every detail of your life. It's about allowing yourself to be human, to feel, to connect, to show empathy. His words struck a chord. Maybe vulnerability was not in revealing her past entirely, but rather in sharing parts of it that contributed to her empathy in her profession. She pondered how much she could share without losing herself in the process. Encouraged by his support, Hope made a pact with herself, a personal challenge. She would engage more deeply not just with her patients but with James as well. It was time to explore what vulnerability looked like in her personal life alongside her professional journey. Maybe through sharing her inner conflicts, she could create a framework for deeper conversations. As she settled into bed that night, a mixture of excitement and anxiety coursed through her veins. The question that loomed over her was not simply about her professional development, but about the entangled dynamics forming between her and James. What truths would emerge as they peeled back layers of insecurity together? And then, as sleep overtook her, a thought whispered through the corridors of her mind. Could the journey they were embarking on reshape the very foundations of who they'd been, not just for each other, but for themselves? Tomorrow would hold the potential for new revelations, but for now, both inspiration and doubt danced perilously together in her thoughts, awaiting another day filled with possibilities. What essential truth would she discover next? The next morning arrived with a sense of resolve that propelled Hope out of bed. Sunlight streamed into her room, illuminating the very walls that had witnessed her doubts and fears. The daunting challenge of embracing vulnerability now felt like an opportunity, a fresh canvas awaiting her brushstrokes. The uncertainty of how her self-exploration would unfold both excited and unsettled her. After her morning rituals, she headed into the chaos of the ER, determined to embrace each moment with authenticity. Today was not merely a shift, it was a chance to unravel the intricate threads of her experience and share them with others. As she stepped through the threshold of her professional world, a thought flickered in her mind. True transformation begins with genuine connection. Her first patient, a young woman in her 20s, was overwhelmed by anxiety about an upcoming surgery. The usual clinical approach felt too sterile today. Instead, Hope opted for a more human touch. "What are your biggest concerns?" she asked gently, allowing room for vulnerability to settle in the small examination room. "I just feel like everyone expects me to be strong," the patient admitted, tears glistening in her eyes. Hope recognized that look. It mirrored her own struggles. With empathy coursing through her, she reflected on her personal journey of maintaining strength while grappling with expectations. "Sometimes strength can be found in our fears," Hope shared, her voice steady yet soft. They talked, not just about the surgery, but about life's uncertainties, the weight of pressure, and the anxiety that accompanied them. As she listened and validated the patient's feelings, Hope felt a warmth bloom inside her. This was connection, and it was invigorating. The rest of her day was punctuated by similar encounters. With each patient, she let small pieces of herself shine through, an acknowledgement of shared fears, an insight into her journey. She was no longer merely a physician, she was a steward of interconnected human experiences. Each interaction transformed the patient from a statistic into a person with a story, and in turn, revealed layers of herself she had yet to acknowledge. Later that evening, as she prepared for her video call with James, Hope found herself confronting the uncertainties that had become so familiar. She couldn't deny the thrill coursing through her. She was exploring new territory, a mingling of her personal and professional lives that felt both terrifying and liberating. "Hey, how did today go?" James's voice greeted her warmly, his eyes keen and searching. A small smile formed on her lips. "I had some really powerful conversations. I feel like I'm stepping closer to this idea of vulnerability." "Step by step, right? What did you learn?" As she shared her experiences, she felt the familiar flutter of doubt creeping in. Was she really making progress, or was she just putting on a brave face? "I worry I'm just being performative. How do I know if I'm genuinely opening up or just attempting to fit some ideal of vulnerability?" James paused, a thoughtful look on his face. "It's the honesty that counts, Hope. It's okay to feel conflicted about how you're embodying this journey, but be careful not to silence your own truth in the search for connection." His words resonated, igniting a spark of awareness. On this path of discovery, she might stumble, might falter, but she had to listen to her own voice above all. After they ended the call, she found herself deep in contemplation. This juxtaposition of vulnerability and professionalism opened doors she hadn't known existed. In her pursuit of authenticity, she was discovering a more profound connection with herself, and an unfamiliar strength began to take root. But as she lay down that night, the lingering question struck her. How would she navigate the complexities that arose when this new self began to interact with her previous identity? What challenges awaited her as she pursued this intertwined journey of personal growth and professional responsibility? And what shadows of her past might emerge to challenge her newfound revelations? Hope awoke to the soft glow of morning light filtering through her window, her heart racing with a blend of excitement and trepidation. Today marked a turning point. She had resolved to confront the complexities of her newfound authenticity in a way that would challenge her even further. As she entered the ER, the familiar chaos greeted her, but this time she felt armed with a purpose. The decision to embrace vulnerability meant more than just uplifting her colleagues and patients. It meant confronting the areas of her life that felt out of balance. She could no longer ignore the unresolved tension between her emerging self and the facade she had maintained for so long. Her first patient of the day was an elderly man named Mr. Thompson, a frequent visitor with a recurring heart condition. As she prepped for the routine examination, she noticed the distant look in his eyes, a reflection of his fears, and perhaps an echo of her own. For a moment she hesitated, unsure whether to maintain her professional detachment or bridge the gap between their experiences. "Mr. Thompson," she began, her voice steady yet warm, "how have you been feeling with everything going on?" He sighed heavily, eyes pooling with an unsettling mix of vulnerability and resignation. "Honestly, Hope, I'm terrified. Old age doesn't feel gentle. Sometimes I feel like I'm just waiting for the end." That raw honesty struck something deep within her. Instead of responding with clinical jargon, she leaned in. "It's hard to face those feelings. Do you want to share more about what you're feeling?" To her surprise, he opened up about his regrets and the legacy he wanted to leave for his grandchildren. As they talked, Hope felt a wave of empathy wash over her, reminiscent of her own journey of grappling with expectations. The conversation morphed into a discussion about hope, what it means to genuinely live each day. She shared with him a bit of her own struggle, a life often marred by the pressures of achievement. Mr. Thompson's face softened, a newfound connection forming between them. "You're stronger than you realize, Hope," he said quietly, and for the first time, she allowed herself to fully receive the compliment. The rest of her shift reverberated with the vibrance of similar exchanges. Each moment of vulnerability she shared with her patients fortified both her resolve and her sense of purpose. She realized how much she had hidden behind a wall of professionalism, pushing genuine connection into the shadows. Opening herself had birthed a profound strength, not just for her patients, but for herself as well. As her shift ended and she prepared for her call with James, she couldn't shake the energy coursing through her veins. "I had an incredible day," she exclaimed as soon as he answered. "Tell me everything," he encouraged, his enthusiasm palpable. "This was different, James. I allowed myself to be vulnerable, and I think it transformed my interactions. The connection felt real." Hope spoke, her voice filled with a mix of pride and disbelief. "Framing it this way is important," he replied, his tone becoming serious. "But are you prepared for how others might respond? Vulnerability can be met with both warmth and resistance." His words resonated, awakening a seed of doubt. She had prized this shift in herself, but had also been met with skepticism in the past. Would her colleagues understand? Would they accept her evolving self, or would it threaten their established dynamics? As the doubt loomed over her, Hope realized this path would not simply be easy. It required her to confront the very stories that had shaped her identity. The shadows of her past were not only obstacles, but reflections of the vulnerabilities she was attempting to embrace. With a sense of resolve forming anew within her, she understood this journey demanded courage, not just to embrace her authenticity, but also to encounter the resistance that was sure to arise. What specters of her past awaited her as she thrust herself deeper into this new phase? Determined, she allowed herself to step into the unknown, ready to navigate whatever chaos emerged next. Who would she discover herself to be once she faced the realities of her evolving role, in her profession and in her life? Hope arrived at the hospital the next morning with a resolve that felt sharper than ever. Each step toward the ER echoed a faint promise she had made to herself, to no longer shy away from her authenticity. That promise flickered in her mind as she steeled herself for the potential backlash from colleagues, who might not understand the new depth she sought to foster in her work. The shift began with routine yet mundane tasks. However, as her first patient entered, a young woman named Sarah, Hope sensed the weight of anticipation in the air. Sarah had been admitted for complications after a recent surgery, but it was her anxious demeanor that caught Hope's attention. "Hey there, how are you feeling today?" Hope asked, adopting the warm, empathetic tone she had been experimenting with. "I'm scared," Sarah murmured, averting her gaze. "What if something goes wrong again?" Instead of offering sterile reassurances, Hope found herself hesitating, finding importance in Sarah's fear. "It's okay to feel that way. Sometimes talking about it helps." Hope's voice was quieter, but the sincerity made Sarah glance up. Slowly, their conversation morphed into an exploration of fears, and for the first time, Hope saw the reflection of her own insecurities in Sarah. As Sarah recounted her doubts about her health and future, Hope realized that being open allowed her to reach beyond the clinical responsibilities of her role. They couldn't just share the physical, they also needed the emotional. Not long after, Hope's colleague Lisa approached her as she was wrapping up. "You've been different lately, Hope. Are you okay?" The apprehension that bubbled inside her threatened to spill over. "I'm trying to be more open with my patients. I think it's important," she replied, gauging Lisa's reaction. Lisa raised an eyebrow. "That's a bit risky, don't you think? You could end up too emotionally involved." Hope felt a flicker of irritation. An unexpected tension gripped her as Lisa's skepticism challenged her growth. "Or maybe," she retorted, surprising herself with the sharpness in her voice, "it's what they need." The shift in energy was palpable. Lisa regarded her for a moment, and in that silence, Hope recognized an opportunity, an invitation to discuss the importance of vulnerability in their practice. Encouraged by this fleeting moment of honesty, Hope decided to invite Lisa to a brief lunch discussion about patient relationships. But doubts nagged at her. Did she really want to be open with her colleagues? She could already feel the unease hovering in their dynamic, like silence before a tempest. As the day continued, flashes of self-doubt surfaced, especially when she overheard snippets of conversations among her co-workers. Some seemed genuinely supportive of her changes, while others were far less enthusiastic, worrying aloud about the consequences of blurring professional lines. Hope became acutely aware of the emotional energy swirling around her as she navigated these dual realities. Challenges lay ahead, and they weren't solely contained in patient interactions, but extended into the realm of her professional relationships. Each interaction was a tightrope walk between her commitment to authenticity and the undeniable influence of her colleagues' perspectives. Determined not to shy away from these hurdles, she took a deep breath as she closed out her shift. Hope made a mental note to reach out to Lisa again, focusing on how to bridge the perception gap and possibly open a dialogue that could lead to a deeper understanding of each other's fears and aspirations. Yet as she prepared to leave the hospital, the unease of the day's encounters lingered. Would her colleagues ever come to see the value in vulnerability, or would they continue to resist this change? Moments like these could either break her resolve or strengthen her determination. Hope stood at an emotional crossroads, contemplating how to navigate the delicate terrain of her evolving identity while wrestling with the added pressure of judgment from her peers. In the quiet of the parking lot, she grappling with a question that consumed her. How would she balance her authenticity with the expectations of those around her? In seeking to forge genuine connections, was she perhaps threatening the very fabric of her professional identity? One thing was certain. Her journey was far from concluding. Each moment would serve as a test, and the next confrontation loomed closer than she realized. Who among her colleagues would be the next to challenge her convictions? Hope arrived for her next shift, uncertainty haunting her footsteps like a shadow. The echoes of the previous day's interactions with Sarah and Lisa replayed in her mind, adding weight to her resolve. She was committed to fostering connections with her patients, yet the fear of missteps lingered. As the morning progressed, her duties remained diligently routine. Hope entered the patient room of Mr. Whitaker, a gruff but kind 70-year-old battling depression after multiple failed treatments. His greeting was curt, eyes narrowed, yet there was an undeniable hint of vulnerability hidden beneath his brusque exterior. "Why do you care?" he barked as she introduced herself. Hope inhaled deeply, suppressing the urge to retreat behind her clinical facade. "Because I believe there's always something we can do together to help," she offered, maintaining eye contact. The challenge in his gaze was not lost on her. It pushed her to stay grounded in her newfound commitment to authenticity. "Help? You don't know what it's like," he shot back, a shudder of pain piercing through him. She sensed the anger veiling deeper wounds, and instead of refuting his statement, she shared a glimpse of her own struggle. "You're right. I don't know precisely, but I do know that we can face this together. I'm not here to judge. I'm here to listen." The room fell silent, Mr. Whitaker studying her face, as if peeling back layers of her carefully crafted persona. Moments passed, thick with tension, before he finally muttered, "Why should I trust you?" Hope felt her heart accelerate. This was the crux of her journey, striving for connection in a place where skepticism thrived. Was her honesty enough to build that trust? "Trust is earned over time, but it starts with vulnerability," she replied, feeling the weight of her words resonate. The breakthrough came slowly. He began to talk about his life, memories of joy intertwined with regret. Her heart sank as she listened to his stories, recognizing pieces of herself within his narratives, faded dreams echoing her own. With each shared moment, collaborative breaths emerged, stitching together an invisible thread of connection. As their conversation deepened, Hope felt a sense of empowerment growing within her. By allowing herself to be genuine, she uncovered the capacity to connect beyond the clinical threshold. Perhaps this was the real purpose of her career, not solely to heal bodies, but to touch souls. However, when the session ended, she couldn't shake off the thought of the next encounter. Lisa's skepticism lingered like a specter. Would she be seen as a threat to their professional norms, or a pioneer of a new approach? The idea of facing Lisa made her stomach churn. At lunch, Hope engaged with coworkers, but her mind was elsewhere, fixating on how to approach Lisa. That nagging feeling that this confrontation was imminent propelled her to break the silence. "Lisa, can we chat?" The words stumbled out unexpectedly, but the interest reflected in her eyes gave her hope. "What's on your mind?" Lisa replied, her tone skeptical but curious. "I want to talk about vulnerability in patient care. I think we can do better," she said, each word carved out with intention. Hope felt the weight of the room shift, meeting Lisa's eyes, searching for understanding. Lisa folded her arms. "You really believe that?" The tension thickened. Hope took a deep breath, realizing this was her moment to stand firm. "Yes, I do, and I need you to see that." With every heartbeat, Hope considered the potential fallout. Colleagues listening in, the judgment lurking like shadows, but also the possibility of forging a way for shared growth. This call for engagement felt monumental, pushing her farther down a path she couldn't fully comprehend. As the pressure built, Hope was left wrestling with a mix of fear and fierce determination. Would her voice be heard, or would it echo unheard in the chasms of the hospital's rigid structure? The next words hung in the air, heavy with potential, waiting to reshape the trajectory of her journey. But could she breach that wall? Would Lisa offer her the support she craved, or would she find herself standing alone once more? Hope stood on the precipice, ready to confront the looming uncertainty, and she braced herself for whatever internal battle was about to unfold. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden rays through her modest living space, Hope Miller gathered her thoughts. The day's encounters had sharpened her focus. She faced the duality of vulnerability within herself. Each interaction in the ER had marked her not just as a nurse, but as a healer in every sense of the word. With James's support echoing in her mind, she felt the time had come to confront the inevitable, those who doubted her journey toward a more connected form of patient care. Stepping into the hospital the next morning, a quiet storm brewed within her. Every breath was charged with potential as she prepared for what lay ahead. Would her colleagues embrace her newfound approach, or would they dig in their heels? Her day started with routine exams, but there was no denying the tension that followed her. Ms. Lee, an elderly patient with chronic respiratory issues, caught her eye, but the invitation to discuss personal struggles that had once filled Hope with excitement now wrapped her in apprehension. "Ms. Lee," she began gently, "how have you been feeling today?" "Better, but my family worries about me," Ms. Lee replied with a tremor in her voice, revealing the quiet fear bubbling beneath. "What do you worry about?" Hope asked, leaning into the vulnerability that had become her anchor. Tears pooled in Ms. Lee's eyes as she shared stories of long-lost memories, the weight of helplessness lifting slightly with each passing moment. Hope's heart swelled as they began to engage meaningfully, revealing emotional truths that transcended the mere physical ailments. In that small exam room, Hope realized that everyone carried invisible burdens. Recognizing them became her unwavering mission. Later, she cornered Lisa in the break room, a hesitant resolve pushing her forward. "Can we discuss my approach to patient care?" she asked, eyes firm but vulnerable. Lisa paused, her brow furrowed. "You've been through a lot, Hope. I get it. But I'm worried this angle will make us less professional." "Sharing our humanity is what makes care exceptional," Hope countered, the fire of determination burning within. "It helps patients know they're not alone. I believe it allows us to become better caregivers." A moment of tension played out, but then Lisa responded thoughtfully. "Isn't there a risk? We could lose our professional distance." "Perhaps the distance has been what's holding us back." Hope pressed, the breakthrough brewing within her. "There's power in connection, and it can coexist with professionalism. I've seen it change lives." Hope spoke with clarity that surprised even her, fueled by the warmth of her encounters and the company of her own evolving spirit. The conversation shifted, exploring how they could build camaraderie in the workplace, balancing empathy with professionalism. As the days turned into weeks, Hope focused on interpersonal connections, both within her personal life and in her role as a nurse. She and James had continued to weave deeper conversations into their relationship, openly trading stories of their pasts and aspirations. That bond strengthened her assurance to lead with both empathy and conviction. Patient interactions flourished with renewed vibrancy. She saw healing not only in the physical, but in emotional shared experiences. One patient, a frightened young mother, broke down in tears. "I'm terrified. What if I can't care for my kids?" Hope sat beside her. "You don't have to bear that weight alone," she said. "I understand how it feels. Let's discuss how we can navigate these feelings together." That day, something shifted within the walls of the ER. Colleagues began to take note of her empathetic approach. The once skeptical gazes turned into appreciative nods. By week's end, the hospital administration approached her. "Hope, you've demonstrated impactful results in patient engagement metrics," her supervisor noted, a mixture of pride and surprise coloring her tone. "We'd like you to lead a workshop on emotional care for our staff." The exhilaration that surged through Hope was almost surreal. They recognized her transformation and the momentum she had built. This was validation, not just of her philosophy, but of her growth. Leading the workshop symbolized her journey from a shadowed existence to one where she could stand proud, deeply rooted in the belief that healing was a two-way street. As she prepared for the workshop, Hope reflected on her evolution. She had achieved what was once deemed improbable. By embracing vulnerability, she created pathways to rich connections, rooted in shared struggles and authentic dialogue. The moment had arrived. Standing before her colleagues, the audience filled with familiar faces, she recalled her journey, from the bustling break room to the light of understanding that had illuminated her path. "Today, let's explore how we can fortify our connections with patients," she began, looking around the room with determination. "Healing is not only the absence of physical ailments, it's a multifaceted experience that involves our emotional landscapes." As her voice resonated with determination, Hope felt a sense of solid confidence flow through her. No longer the uncertain nurse held back by fears, she was recognized as a pivotal force in the healing community, a professional who dared to lead. At the workshop's conclusion, colleagues approached her, expressing gratitude for her insights. Hope stood among peers now more united than divided. She had transformed not only her practice, but also the perception surrounding emotional care within their profession. With her heart full and proud of the progress she had achieved, she understood that this was just the beginning. Hope had not only conquered her own doubts, but had dismantled barriers around her, reshaping her legacy in the process. She felt empowered, ready to face whatever challenge lay ahead. And as the last applause erupted, a single thought rang through her mind. She had finally become who she was meant to be. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to support this channel. Don't wait even one more second.